Hi, I'm Ellie Gigi and I'm going to be reviewing The Tropic of Cancer. Okay, let's just get right into it. The Tropic of Cancer was written by Henry Miller in 1934 in France, and it was published in the United States in 1961. And then it was banned for violating certain obscenity laws in the United States, and then subsequently that decision by the courts, which there was a long legal battle over, was ultimately reversed, and then people were able to buy it wherever they want, and stores didn't need to worry anymore about being punished by the law for selling this book. However, I'm not really here to, I don't really want to get into the nitty-gritty of the life of Henry Miller and all the obstacles the book had to go through, which I think a lot of people talk about in their book reviews of this particular book. I don't really want to do that. I want to really delve deeply into the book itself and try to give people out there a little bit of an understanding about the book. So initially when I read this book, I thought to myself, I can't believe this book is considered one of the 125 best books ever written. I was like, that's really insane. I cannot believe that. This book is just loaded with nonsense and it's extremely vulgar. And I couldn't make any sense of it, at least not in the first few chapters. The book doesn't really have numbered chapters, it just kind of goes on and on. But the first few pages, the first few equivalent, I guess, to what I guess a chapter or two or three would be in a regular book, I was just like, I put the book down a few times and I was like, I don't know if I even want to read this. Like, why do I want to waste my time? But I persevered. I said, you know what? Let me get through this initial stage, if you will, of the book. You know, if you think about it, the book, Henry Miller doesn't even consider it really a book. In fact, I'll read you just in the first few pages. Actually, this is page number 2. Here it says, this is not a book. This is libel, slander, defamation of character. This is not a book in the ordinary sense of the word. No, this is a prolonged insult, a gob of spit in the face of art, a kick in the pants to God, man, destiny, time, love, and beauty, what you will. So, I don't even think Henry Miller really considered that a book, but it is a book. One thing you have to understand about Henry Miller in this particular book, and he even writes about it himself, he says that he sort of just wrote down whatever he promised himself, that anything that came to his mind at that time that he was writing this book, he would put in the book, which he really did. I mean, the book basically, in case, just to give you a little tiny overview of the book, it's basically about an American man who's in Paris in the 1920s, 30s, and he's kind of trotting around Paris, sleeping with a lot of prostitutes, he parties a lot, various interactions with his friends, not close friends, and it's basically a day in the life of Henry Miller, but it's really like a day, like you have kind of a glimpse of time spanned in Henry Miller's life in Paris. I don't think everybody will understand this book. I think that this really isn't a book for everybody. I know that sounds a little bit cliche, but it's really just not for everybody. I think that most people who read this book, or even start to read this book, are going to say, what in the world am I reading? What on earth is this? It just, like, for example, if he wants to describe a color, he won't just say the color. he'll use like 10 different ways to name that particular color in succession. He'll just say blah, 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 blah. And you're like, what is up with this author? And it's not like it's fun to read that way. It's like you just kind of you want the book to be coherent and to kind of make sense. And I'm not saying this book doesn't make sense, but I'm saying the initial stages of reading this book, like let's say like the first 30 or 40 pages, you're going to be like, what on earth is going on? Once you pass, I think, the 40 pages, things start to make a little bit more sense, and you start to get an idea of where the author is coming from. And I think that ultimately, for anybody who doesn't really understand what this book is about, I think that Henry Miller, when he was writing this book, he was really trying to sort of awaken within people a certain drive that most people have oppressed, repressed, or suppressed in their lives. So Henry Miller, in a lot of his writings, just about life and whatever, you can really sense that when he wrote this book, he was talking to men that haven't really achieved what they want to achieve in life. Men that are on their way to finding what it is that they want to do in life. And he really kind of emphasizes the fact that most people, or most men especially, are just kind of, I don't remember what he calls them, but he just references them as almost like, and I'm not quoting him, but like subpar to other men. Like he has a big divide in the social statuses of men, and he basically divides them up into men who have achieved something in their life, whether or not it's becoming the author that they've always wanted to be, an artist, a musician, a teacher, whatever it is, as opposed to the people that kind of have a mundane life where they just kind of wake up, go to work, to work somewhere where they don't even like working, and come home, basically do nothing, wake up in the morning, go to work again. And he says that, the world needs those type of people, but he's definitely not one of them. And he kind of looks down on people that, I don't want to say he looks down, but he just sort of, he wants to, honestly, the way I feel about it, and this is why I've come to appreciate this book and Henry Miller as an author, is because at the end of the day, he's basically saying what any clinical psychologist will tell men that are in their 20s and 30s and 40s, that haven't perhaps achieved this meteoric rise to success like they thought they would when they graduated college. But basically what he's saying is that, you need to do, as cliche as it sounds, you need to do what you really love doing, and not care about the consequences on the way to getting that thing. And I think that if you have that in mind while you read this book, you'll really, once you kind of internalize what his goal is, and I think that he does have a goal in this book. Once you realize what his intentions are behind what he writes, then you're going to be able to understand the book better and tolerate these seemingly nonsensical ramblings that he goes on. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I got to say, when I first started reading this book, I absolutely hated it. By the time I finished with the book, I do think it's an absolutely amazing book, and it's definitely one of a kind. And, there are some authors that have similar writing techniques, similar writing styles, but I think Henry Miller is somebody who definitely stands alone in this arena. And I don't know, I mean, honestly, if you read this book today, I mean, it's 2020, you're not, and you didn't know what year it was written, I don't think you would guess that it was written in 1934. What else? What else? So, in the book, Henry Miller describes, in the book, Henry Miller, what is wrong with me? In the book, Henry Miller describes his day-to-day gallivanting around Paris, sleeping with prostitutes, his adoration and admiration for prostitutes, his adoration for food, French food especially, talking about waking up late, hanging out with his buddies, going out to a restaurant, getting drunk, having orgies. You know, he's walking down the street describing the buildings as lizards that are just sitting there. And, you know, it's really kind of interesting because you would kind of, if you didn't know any better and you didn't really know who wrote this book, what it's about, you would think like, you know, like if a 16-year-old kid, you know, wrote this and turned it into his teacher as an assignment to his English teacher, she'd probably be like, what the hell is this? And I think that, you know, one of the problems I have with the way people critique books and critique writers today is the fact that the author's clout has so much to do with the way the public will accept his book, what he wrote, or not really accept it, or criticize it in a very negative way. And so I think that, I mean, that's kind of a different topic, and that's like a topic about, you know, great writers being unnoticed and things like that, which I think a lot of them are. But at the end of the day, if you gave this book without a title, without the author written on it, and not, you gave it to somebody and not telling them really anything about it, they would probably think, honestly, I don't know if this is like maybe a little extreme, but I think they would think that maybe like a teenager wrote it. So anyway, to put everything in a nutshell and to wrap it up, in conclusion, my overall, I think that this book is an outstanding book. I would give it a 10 out of 10. I don't usually give books that high of a score, and I'm actually kind of shocked that I ended up giving this book a 10 out of 10, because when I first read this book, I said to myself, what on earth is this? I can't believe what I'm reading. And not because of the vulgarity that's in it, but just because it didn't make sense. It's like I'm reading nonsense. I felt like it's like reading a comic book that you really don't like. You're like, what? Like, I don't want to waste my time. You feel, you know that feeling that you get like when you sit down on the couch and like you've watched like way too much TV and you're like, well, what the hell did I just do for the past couple hours? Like, what a waste. That's kind of how I felt in the initial stages of the book, like the first 30 or 40 pages. But then, once I got a better understanding of Henry Miller and a little bit, I mean, I just got to know him, not what people write about him, just things like interviews that he's given, things that he's said in interviews. You know, it immediately kind of put everything into perspective for this book. Because I first started reading this book, then I was like, what a waste of time. I'm not reading this nonsense anymore. And then I kind of did like, I'm like, who's this guy, Henry Miller? Like, what's his deal? And then after I did some research and I heard him talk, then I said, okay, you know what? Let me give it another try. And having that in mind, everything I learned about him, his personal being, then I said, okay. And then when I started reading the book after learning about Henry Miller, then it became, I think I've said this before, but I think it became much more tolerable. Not only tolerable, I shouldn't even say tolerable. It became enjoyable, really enjoyable to read. And I looked forward to reading it every day. So I think that if you want to read a very cool, interesting, kind of fun, easygoing book, you should do it. And you know, this book is definitely a classic, and I'm happy that it's considered one of the best books, one of the 125, that it's in the 125 best books of all time. I think it deserves that, because in 1934 to write a book like that is extremely innovative. And it's even innovative by today's standards. So, and as far as I know, and I do a lot of research about books, as far as I know, I don't think that anybody has come close to writing a book like this at all. So, buy the book, enjoy it, read it, and enjoy it. And I'd love to hear what you guys think. So feel free to leave a comment and let me know what you think. Bye.